Mr. Chair, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. I wanted to start, before I get to the amendment, to actually talk about why all of this is so important here today. You see, I hold prescription drug roundtables all across the district, and there's a recent one that comes to mind, and a story that I want this body to hear. We were doing a roundtable in Dubuque where we invited folks to come and talk about their issues with drug prices and how that's impacting their lives personally. And there was a family that came, a young woman who was in her teens with her mom and her dad. You see, she has diabetes, and they struggle every month to try to figure out how they're going to keep affording insulin and her meters. And as you know, different meters with different insurances happen almost every single year, and telling me these stories. And in the middle of the roundtable, the young woman and her mother had to leave to go to a doctor's appointment, and it was her dad that stayed for the rest of it. And as I'm going around saying thank you for coming and sharing your story today, I shook the dad's hand, and he looked at me and he said, "Please do everything you can to fight for my daughter and fight to make sure that she's going to be able to afford the care that she needs," because he told me he's very worried about when she turns 26, and if she's not on their insurance, what does that look like? Is she going to be able to keep affording it? And he told me that he wanted to be able to walk his daughter down the aisle one day at her wedding, not her funeral. I will never forget that conversation, and I will never stop fighting to make sure that we lower the cost of these life-saving medications that so many folks across our country and in my district need and rely on. It is why I am so proud to support the Lower Drug Costs Now Act, which puts measures in place to make sure that drug companies aren't charging us double, triple, or quadruple what countries like Canada and Australia currently pay. However, H.R. 3 is currently missing a bipartisan drug pricing reform that has been supported by Senator Grassley, by President Trump, and members of both parties alike. It's requiring drug companies to disclose pricing information on prescription drugs when they advertise directly to consumers like us and folks in my district. We've all seen the TV commercials that promote prescription drugs. What we may not realize is that pharmaceutical companies spend billions on this advertising. Last year, they spent over $6 billion, and a lot of that was actually to encourage people to get expensive brand name drugs. My amendment would require TV advertisements for prescription drugs to include the list price for a 30-day regimen or a typical course of treatment. With this transparency, we can all be empowered to make informed choices and bring down costs to our healthcare system. When drug companies use advertising to boost demand for drugs whose prices just keep going up, the American people deserve to know what these drugs cost. My amendment will ensure that we get a complete picture of the prescription drug options we see on TV. I urge my colleagues today to support this amendment, support this bill, and with that, Mr. Chair, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady from Iowa reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to claim time in support of the amendment.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
So this is a good amendment. It would require H.R. 3 include a provision requiring each drug ad on TV to include the list price of the drug. I support this policy. Republicans do as well. It's just a simple way to increase openness in healthcare, so transparency that patients are, I think, searching for. In fact, this bipartisan approach is already in the Republican bill in front of us today, H.R. 19. I don't know why it was rejected in the initial Democrats' bill. I think perhaps it was written in secret. It was all partisan measures. We know at the end of the day it's deader than a doornail. But I think after that is done, after impeachment, I don't know how many years that thing goes on and wastes our lives, but after all that foolishness is done, I hope our Democrat friends will come back to the negotiating table so we can work on more common sense bipartisan ideas like this one. And despite my strong opposition to H.R. 3, it is such a cruel and false choice to force people to choose between lower drugs and life-saving cures for Alzheimer's, ALS, Parkinson's, and so many cancers. That's just wrong. I do support this amendment. I urge my colleagues to support it too, and I hope the gentlelady from Iowa will continue to demonstrate her support for more openness by also supporting the bipartisan H.R. 19 to vote later today. With that, I yield back the balance of my time. Let's vote.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentlelady from Iowa is recognized.
Mr. Chair, can I check the balance of my time?
1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am happy to hear that my colleagues across the aisle will be supporting this important amendment. And I'd like to end with another story that I heard at another roundtable, one from one of our farmers in our district who came to our Waterloo roundtable and came with his wife, Heidi, who is battling MS, and was so concerned about how he was going to continue to make it with the ongoing trade war with China that has been taking his soybean markets and the attacks on renewable fuels that have been hurting him every single day as a corn grower as well, and the $80K every 6 months that they were going to have to pay for the MS medication, that he went to his lawyer and asked his lawyer, how is he going to keep the farm and make sure his wife gets what he needs? And his lawyer looked at him and said, if you want to keep your farm, you should consider divorcing your wife. That's another story that I will never forget. These are the reasons we are here today, that we fight for legislation like this, that we get these things done, and that we put our constituents and people over the politics that we continue to see here from folks who'd like to divide us instead of unite us. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It yields back the balance